The cat girl who took over my couch after a bad breakup. She wasn't just a coworker needing a place to stay. Thistle was an alien diplomat on the run. Her bad breakup a carefully constructed lie to cover a galaxy-spanning conspiracy. The small apartment Rowan offered her became Earth's unlikely nexus in an interstellar power struggle. His gentle, exhausted heart, still reeling from human betrayal, was about to be entangled in a conflict far beyond his understanding, where a quiet evening on the couch meant the fate of two worlds. Rowan traced the condensation ring left by his water glass on the polished wood of his coffee table. The silence in his apartment felt like a physical weight, pressing in since Maria left. Every creak of the old building, every distant siren, only emphasized the hollow space beside him. He stared at the empty couch, a monument to their shared evenings, now just a beige expanse. His heart still carried the jagged edges of betrayal, a quiet ache that made even breathing feel like effort. He had offered Thistle the spare space purely from habit, a reflexive kindness. He hadn't expected her to accept. A sharp knock at the door startled him. He pushed himself off the sofa, the sudden movement a jolt. Thistle stood on his doorstep, a single, compact travel bag slung over her shoulder. Her gray fur, short and sleek, shimmered faintly under the hallway lights. Her green eyes, wide and intelligent, scanned his face with an unnerving directness. A tail, a surprising detail he had only glimpsed at the office, curled once around her leg before settling still. "Rowan," she stated, her voice a low purr, "thank you for this." Of course he managed, stepping aside. "Come in. It's not much, but it's quiet." She entered, her movements fluid and economical. She didn't linger, moving straight to the living room. Her gaze swept over the apartment, assessing. "The couch is fine. I don't require much." "There's a guest room, actually," Rowan offered, feeling a pang of awkwardness. He'd forgotten to mention it. Thistle turned, her tail flicking a single, sharp arc. "No, the couch is sufficient. I prefer open spaces." Her tone was polite but firm. She dropped her bag beside the sofa, then straightened, her athletic build poised. She moved with an innate grace, every motion deliberate. He noticed her bare feet, silent on his hardwood floor. "Right," Rowan said, rubbing the back of his neck. "Well, make yourself at home." She nodded, then walked to the window, peering out at the city lights. Her profile was sharp, her ears, subtly pointed at the tips, twitching almost imperceptibly as if registering sounds beyond his range. He watched her for a moment, then retreated to the kitchen, feeling an odd mix of relief and unease. Thistle was not like anyone he had ever met. Her presence, while initially unsettling, did fill some of the oppressive quiet. The first few evenings were a study in comfortable, if unusual, silence. Thistle occupied the couch with an almost regal air, often observing him as he cooked. She rarely spoke unless directly addressed, and her answers were concise. Rowan found himself talking more than usual, detailing his day, recounting trivial office anecdotes. Her green eyes would track him, sometimes narrowing slightly as if processing every word. One evening, as he prepared a simple pasta dish, a sharp knife slipped from his grasp. It spun downwards, glinting. Before he could even react, Thistle, who had been engrossed in a documentary about deep-sea bioluminescence, moved. It was a blur of motion, too fast for his eyes to fully follow. Her hand, slender yet strong, snatched the knife from the air inches above his foot. She held it steady, then placed it carefully on the counter. Her green eyes, wide with momentary alarm, met his. "My apologies," she said, her voice softer than usual, a reflex. "Are you unharmed?" Rowan stared, his heart thumping. "I'm fine." That was incredible. A faint flush, almost imperceptible beneath her gray fur, colored her cheeks. "It is nothing, just quick hands." She returned to the couch, her tail now curled tightly around her legs. He noticed a tremor in her hand as she picked up the remote. He knew she was not just quick. He knew she was not just human. The thought, instead of fear, sparked a curious warmth in his chest. Later, as they ate, the silence felt different. Less empty, more companionable. Thistle ate slowly, methodically, her senses seemingly heightened. She picked out a single olive from his bowl, sniffing it delicately before tasting. "This has a complex profile," she murmured, an unexpected comment. "It's just an olive," Rowan chuckled, feeling a genuine smile stretch his lips for the first time in weeks. Her tail, which had been still, flicked once, a subtle, almost imperceptible movement. She didn't elaborate, but a hint of something unreadable, perhaps amusement, flickered in her eyes. He found himself watching her more often. Her movements, even when relaxed, held a coiled energy. When she slept, curled gracefully on the couch, her tail would twitch occasionally, a quiet barometer of her dreams. He often saw her gazing out the window at the distant city lights, a subtle longing in her posture that mirrored his own quiet loneliness. He recognized in her a fierce independence, a self-reliance that resonated with his own battered spirit. One night, a quiet evening settled around them like a comforting blanket. Rowan was reading, Thistle sketching in a small, bound book he hadn't noticed before. The only sound was the rustle of his pages and the soft whisper of her pencil. He looked up, catching her eye. A smile, small and genuine, touched his lips. She offered a slight, almost imperceptible nod in return, her green eyes holding a quiet understanding. The apartment, once a painful reminder of loss, now held an unexpected calm, a nascent warmth that began to soothe the raw edges of his heart. His gentle, exhausted heart, still reeling from human betrayal, found a strange solace in the presence of this guarded, mysterious woman. The apartment settled into a rhythm. Rowan's mornings began with the quiet scrape of Thistle's bare feet on the polished concrete floor, a sound he had come to anticipate. She moved with an innate grace, often preparing a simple breakfast, always leaving him a portion. He learned she preferred her coffee black, a single spoonful of sugar, and that she favored documentaries about ancient Earth civilizations. Her green eyes, usually sharp with observation, softened when watching images of forgotten cities and cultures. "They built so much," she remarked one evening watching a program about the pyramids. Her tail, relaxed against the cushion, gave a faint twitch, "with so little." "We learn," Rowan said, stirring his own tea, slowly. Thistle nodded, a thoughtful expression on her face. "On Lyra Prime our structures grow. They are not built, not exactly." She paused, her gaze distant. "We guide the living rock." Rowan looked at her, intrigued. "Living rock, like it grows itself." "It has a consciousness of a sort," she explained, her voice low. "Sensitive to certain frequencies. We harmonize with it. Our cities are always evolving, always breathing." A subtle longing flickered in her eyes, quickly masked. "It is a different way." He often saw that same longing when she stared out the window at the distant city lights. He recognized it. It was the quiet ache of missing something fundamental, a place or a person, an echo of his own recent loss. He never pressed her for details, sensing a deep vulnerability beneath her guarded exterior. Instead, he offered quiet company, a shared meal, a comfortable silence. One afternoon, Rowan was tidying his small study, a room he rarely used now. He unearthed an old communications device, a relic from a brief, ill-fated venture into amateur radio. It was a bulky, outdated piece of equipment, but it still held a charge. He powered it on, a nostalgic hum filling the small space. Static crackled, then cleared slightly. Suddenly, the device emitted a sharp, high-pitched whine. A burst of alien symbols flashed across the tiny screen, too fast for Rowan to decipher. The air in the room seemed to thicken, a strange pressure against his skin. Thistle appeared in the doorway, her body rigid. Her tail, usually a soft curve, stood straight out behind her, bristling. Her green eyes were wide, fixed on the device. "Turn it off," she commanded, her voice a low growl, unlike anything he had heard from her before. Rowan, startled by her intensity, fumbled with the power button. The symbols vanished, the whine ceased, and the strange pressure dissipated. He looked at Thistle, whose breathing was shallow, her fur still slightly raised. "What was that?" he asked, his voice quiet. She exhaled slowly, her tail slowly relaxing. "Nothing. An interference. Old technology often picks up stray signals." She walked over to the device, her fingers brushing its casing. It's harmless, just static. Her dismissal felt too quick, too practiced. Rowan felt a knot tighten in his stomach. He knew it was more than static. He had felt the energy, seen the symbols. But Thistle's expression, though now composed, held a warning. He decided not to push. Not yet. He watched her throughout the evening. She was quieter than usual, her movements more deliberate. She sketched in her small book, but her gaze kept drifting towards the study door. He realized she was thinking, processing, perhaps planning. He noticed the subtle clench of her jaw, a tension he hadn't seen before. Later, as they prepared for bed, Thistle paused by the window, her silhouette stark against the city glow. "Earth is so different," she murmured, her voice soft, almost wistful. "So much noise, and yet a quiet strength." Rowan stood beside her, looking out. "We try." She turned to him, her eyes searching his. "You have a good heart, Rowan." The words were simple, direct, without artifice. He felt a blush rise to his cheeks. "You too, Thistle," he replied, meaning it deeply. Her independence, her self-reliance, was not a shield but a testament to her strength. He saw in her not just a capable alien but a kindred spirit who carried her own burdens with quiet dignity. He felt a deep, unfamiliar protectiveness bloom within him. It was a warmth unlike the sting of betrayal, a comforting heat that settled in his chest. He knew, with a certainty that surprised him, that he would stand by her, whatever mysteries she held. Her secrets felt less like a threat and more like a trust. The apartment, once a lonely cage, now felt like a refuge, a shared sanctuary. A sharp, insistent chime ripped through the quiet. It wasn't from Rowan's phone or any device he owned. The sound emanated from Thistle's wrist, a sleek, almost invisible band he had never noticed before. Alien symbols, luminous and rapid, scrolled across its surface. Thistle froze, her eyes widening, her tail flicking up rigid behind her. The subtle purr that often accompanied her contented moments vanished, replaced by a strained silence. Her calm facade, usually so impenetrable, shattered. Her breath hitched. "What is that?" Rowan asked, the question barely a whisper, his heart hammering. "No," Thistle breathed, her voice tight with a fear he hadn't heard before. She pressed a frantic series of commands on the device, her fingers moving with impossible speed. But the symbols continued to scroll, glowing brighter, the chime growing more insistent. A low, guttural growl rumbled in her chest, a sound of pure desperation. Before Rowan could speak, a shimmer appeared in the center of the living room, a distortion in the air like heat over pavement. It solidified, not with a flash or a bang, but with a silent, unsettling certainty, resolving into the form of a being whose presence immediately filled the room with authority. The newcomer was taller than Thistle, with similar sleek fur, though hers was a deep, iridescent blue. Her eyes, sharp and calculating, scanned the room, settling on Thistle, then briefly on Rowan with an assessing gaze. She wore a tailored uniform, dark and severe, devoid of any discernible insignia. "Thistle, you have been located," the blue-furred agent stated, her voice smooth and resonant, carrying an undeniable command. "Your defection is no longer viable. Lyra Prime demands your immediate return." Thistle took a step back, her tail lashing, a low snarl escaping her. "You have no jurisdiction here, Agent Kale." Kale ignored her, addressing Rowan directly. "This individual, Thistle, is a disgraced diplomat. She has absconded from her duties, and from the justice she justly deserves for betraying her people. You are harboring a fugitive human." Rowan felt a cold dread, but it was quickly eclipsed by a surge of protectiveness. He stepped forward, placing himself slightly in front of Thistle. "Betraying her people? What are you talking about?" His voice was steady, despite the tremor in his hands. Thistle gripped his arm, her claws, usually retracted, just barely pricking his skin. "Rowan, listen to me," she said, her green eyes locked onto his, pleading. "My bad breakup was a lie, a cover. I didn't defect from Lyra Prime for personal reasons. I uncovered a conspiracy, a deep, pervasive corruption at the highest levels of our government. They were planning to exploit undeveloped worlds, to siphon their resources under the guise of aid. I tried to expose it, but they silenced me, branded me a traitor. Her words tumbled out, urgent, raw, stripped of all her usual guardedness. I sought refuge here on Earth, hoping to find a way to reveal the truth. Rowan stared at her, the pieces of their strange cohabitation clicking into place. The deep secrecy, the alarm at the old communication device, her wistful longing for a home she couldn't truly return to. His heart ached for her, for the burden she carried in silence. This wasn't just an alien being. This was Thistle, the one who brought quiet warmth to his lonely apartment, who had slowly, inadvertently healed his heart. "You speak of justice," Rowan said, turning his gaze back to Kale, his voice hardening. "But if what she says is true, you're the one subverting it." Kale's eyes narrowed. "You are an ignorant, primitive human. You understand nothing of galactic politics or the stability we maintain. This is not your concern." "It becomes my concern when you threaten someone in my home," Rowan retorted, surprised by his own defiance. He felt a fierce resolve solidify within him. He didn't know the first thing about galactic conspiracies, but he knew betrayal and he knew loyalty. Thistle had been loyal to him in her own way by simply being present. Now it was his turn. Thistle looked at him, a flicker of profound surprise, then gratitude in her eyes. Her grip on his arm tightened, a silent acknowledgement. "We will not allow you to interfere," Kale warned, taking a step closer. The air around her seemed to crackle with barely contained energy. "Lyra Prime's reach is long, human. Do not mistake your world's isolation for safety." "And you mistake my world's quiet for weakness," Rowan replied, meeting her gaze evenly. He had no weapons, no special abilities, just a stubborn human heart. "She stays." Kale held his stare for a long moment, a silent battle of wills. Then a faint smile, cold and humorless, touched her lips. "Very well, for now. But know this, Thistle, your clock is ticking, and your human ally will learn the true cost of defiance." With a sudden, almost imperceptible shift, Kale's form shimmered again, fading from existence as silently as she had appeared, leaving only the lingering scent of something metallic and foreign in the air. Silence fell, heavy and profound. Rowan stood there, his chest heaving, adrenaline coursing through him. He turned to Thistle, who was looking at him with an expression of awe and disbelief. You stood up to her," Thistle whispered, her voice still shaky. "You don't even know everything, and you still stood up for me." "I know enough," Rowan said, reaching out to gently touch her arm, his fingers brushing her soft fur. "You're not a traitor. You're trying to do what's right. And I believe you." His words were simple, direct, without artifice. He saw in her not just a capable alien, but a kindred spirit who carried her own burdens with quiet dignity, amplified now by the magnitude of her secret. His protectiveness had transformed into an unbreakable bond. The apartment, once a lonely cage, then a shared sanctuary, now felt like a fortress, a bastion against an unknown galaxy. Their relationship, once housemates, had profoundly shifted. They were allies now, bound by a shared, perilous purpose. "She won't stop with a warning," Thistle said, her voice tight, breaking the silence. Her green eyes, usually so composed, held a flicker of deep concern. "Kale is a direct agent of the Council. Her mission will be relentless." Rowan nodded, the adrenaline slowly receding, leaving him with a quiet resolve. "So what do we do?" He looked around his living room, suddenly seeing it not as a sanctuary but as a target. "What exactly did you uncover, Thistle? What do we need to expose?" Thistle walked to the window, peering out between the blinds. "My government, the Lyra Prime Council, has been orchestrating a vast resource extraction network across less developed worlds. They promise aid, technology, then systematically deplete planets of their natural wealth. They leave them barren." She turned, her expression grim. "I found irrefutable evidence, encrypted data logs, financial transactions, projected planetary depletion rates. It's all stored securely, scattered across various hidden data caches, and relayed through a network of sympathetic contacts." "Why didn't you just release it?" Rowan asked, leaning forward. "The Council controls all major galactic communication channels. Any direct broadcast would be suppressed, twisted, or dismissed as propaganda from a disgraced diplomat, she explained, a bitter edge to her voice. I needed time, a safe place, and an unexpected route. Earth was perfect, isolated, overlooked, and your planet's communication infrastructure is surprisingly robust and decentralized. A perfect conduit. So we need to collect this evidence and then find a way to broadcast it to Lyra Prime, Rowan summarized, a plan forming in his mind. It sounded impossible, but he had faced impossible things before, like the quiet rebuilding of his own shattered life. Precisely, Thistle confirmed. My primary contact, a former colleague named Cygnus, has the key components for a secure data transfer. He's on Terra Firma, a neutral research station in the Delphian system. Getting to him will be difficult. Before Rowan could respond, his phone buzzed, a number he didn't recognize. He ignored it. Then his internet connection flickered, dropping for a moment before reconnecting. A cold knot formed in his stomach. They're already testing, Thistle murmured, her gaze fixed on his laptop screen. Probing your local network. Kale moved swiftly. All right, Rowan said, standing up. Then we move swiftly too. We need to plan this. He pulled out a pad and pen, a habit from his old project management days. First, how do we get to terra firma? And how do we avoid Kale's agents? Thistle's tail swished slowly, a sign of her deep concentration. There's an old freighter route, mostly used by independent traders. It's slow but less monitored, and we will need disguises. Human disguises for me, of course, but also a cover story for both of us. She looked at him, a faint, almost imperceptible smile touching her lips. You're surprisingly calm, Rowan. I've been through worse breakups, he deadpanned, a wry grin on his face. This just happens to involve galactic empires. Details. He saw a genuine laugh escape her, a rare, bright sound that warmed something deep inside him. It was a shared moment of levity in the face of immense danger, a testament to their growing bond. Over the next few days, their apartment transformed into a makeshift command center. Thistle, with Rowan's help, meticulously researched human identities and travel routes. She taught him basic Lyran phrases and customs, explaining the complex political landscape of her home world. Rowan, in turn, helped her refine her human persona, coaching her on subtle expressions and nuances that would allow her to blend in. Their conversations were full of quiet intensity, punctuated by moments of shared concern and surprising humor. One evening, as they reviewed their travel options, a faint, high-pitched whine emanated from the street outside. Rowan froze. Did you hear that? Thistle's head snapped up. Her ears swiveled, subtly scanning the sounds. Lyra Prime's surveillance drone, small, almost silent, designed for urban environments. They moved away from the window, their eyes meeting. The reality of their situation pressed in. It wasn't just a political struggle, it was a personal hunt. This freighter route will be our best bet, Thistle said, pointing to a star chart projected on the wall. It will take us through the Cathar Nebula, which disrupts most long-range scanners. But it's also a known haven for smugglers and pirates. Dangerous but necessary. Rowan traced the route with his finger. So, we're trading one type of danger for another. Survival, Rowan, is often a series of such trades, Thistle replied, her green eyes serious. Are you still certain about this? He looked at her, at the determined set of her jaw, the fierce intelligence in her gaze. He thought of her quiet moments of longing for Lyra Prime, the burden she carried alone for so long. He thought of his own past loneliness, the emptiness that had settled in his heart before she arrived. More certain than anything I've done in a long time, he said, his voice firm. You're not doing this alone. Their plan solidified. They would pose as human traders, seeking rare minerals from the outer rim, a plausible cover for their journey to terra firma. The apartment, they knew, was no longer safe. It was simply a temporary staging ground. They packed only essentials, Thistle's few personal items alongside Rowan's practical gear. As they prepared to leave, a final check of the apartment, Rowan caught a glimpse of himself in the hallway mirror. He looked different. His eyes held a new light, a quiet strength born of purpose. The exhaustion was still there, but now it was mixed with an exhilarating readiness. "Ready?" Thistle asked, her voice soft, standing by the door, a small bag slung over her shoulder. He took a deep breath, the scent of his familiar home filling his lungs one last time. "As I'll ever be." He stepped out, Thistle following close behind, leaving the quiet apartment and the illusion of safety behind them. The city lights glittered around them, but their gaze was fixed on the stars and the perilous journey that lay ahead. Their bond, forged in the quiet corners of a small apartment, now prepared to face the vast, dangerous galaxy. The small transport ship, a nondescript cargo hauler Thistle had acquired through her contacts, launched with a powerful shudder. Rowan watched Earth recede, a blue marble fading into the vast blackness. The sheer scale of space was overwhelming, yet Thistle sat beside him at the controls, her expression calm, her focus absolute. "First time in true deep space?" Thistle asked, a hint of amusement in her voice. Rowan swallowed. "Definitely, it's a lot bigger than I imagined." "It always is," she replied, adjusting their trajectory. "But it's also a place of hiding and opportunity. Our journey through the Cathar Nebula will be challenging. The gravimetric distortions make navigation tricky, and it's a popular hunting ground for those who prefer to remain unseen." As they plunged into the nebula, the stars outside blurred into streaks of gas and dust, painted in hues of violet and crimson. The ship's instruments flickered erratically. A warning light flashed on the console. "What's that?" Rowan asked, leaning closer. "Gravitational instability affecting the primary thruster coils," Thistle said, her fingers flying across the controls. "We're losing power to the aft engines. Not critical yet, but it will slow us down, make us an easier target." Rowan's mind raced. He remembered Thistle's explanation of the ship's basic mechanics during their brief training. "Can I reroute auxiliary power from the life support to the thrusters temporarily? A burst of energy might stabilize them." Thistle glanced at him, her green eyes surprised. "Risky. It would drop cabin pressure for a few seconds. Are you willing?" "We don't have time to be delicate," Rowan said, already moving towards the access panel Thistle indicated. He pulled off the cover, revealing a tangle of wires. "Tell me which ones." She quickly gave him instructions, her voice precise. Rowan's hands, usually accustomed to a keyboard, worked with unexpected agility, connecting the correct conduits. A spark jumped, and the cabin lights dimmed momentarily. A deep hum resonated through the deck plates, then the warning light on the console extinguished. "Stabilized," Thistle confirmed, a small smile playing on her lips. "Impressive. Most humans would hesitate or panic." "Most humans haven't had their couch occupied by an alien diplomat," Rowan countered, a grin spreading across his face. The danger had invigorated him, sharpening his senses. The rest of their passage through the Cathar Nebula was a tense dance of evasion and precise navigation. They spotted several unmarked vessels, their transponders silent, lurking in the swirling gases. Thistle deftly maneuvered their ship, using the nebula's own chaotic energy to mask their signature. Rowan, stationed at the sensor array, learned to differentiate between natural phenomena and potential threats, his focus unwavering. He found a new sense of purpose in the silent vigilance, a quiet understanding growing between them with each successful dodge. Days later, they emerged into clear space, the nebula a distant, beautiful smear behind them. Terra Firma Station hung before them, a colossal structure of interlocking modules, orbiting a gas giant named Veridian. Lights twinkled across its metallic surface like scattered jewels. "Terra Firma is a neutral research and trade hub," Thistle explained as they approached the docking bay. "It's a melting pot of species and theoretically a safe place. But Kale's reach is long. We must be cautious." They docked in a bustling port section, the air thick with the scent of varied alien biologies and exotic machinery. Rowan felt a surge of adrenaline as they disembarked, blending into the crowd of beings with different forms and colors. He kept close to Thistle, his hand unconsciously brushing her arm, a silent anchor in the alien chaos. "Our contact is Cygnus," Thistle murmured, leading him through a labyrinthine concourse. "A data broker, highly skilled but notoriously paranoid. We meet in the Nexus Market, a place where information is currency." The Nexus Market was a vibrant cacophony. Stalls displayed shimmering holographic data crystals, strange mechanical parts, and unidentifiable delicacies. They found Cygnus in a dimly lit alcove, hunched over a flickering data slate. Cygnus was a slender being with 4 delicate, multi-jointed arms, covered in iridescent scales that shifted from deep blue to emerald green. Their eyes, large and black, darted nervously. "Thistle," Cygnus hissed, their voice a dry rustle, "you're late. I risked much." "The journey was fraught," Thistle replied, her voice low. "Do you have it?" Cygnus gestured to a small, unassuming data chip. "The initial encryption keys. But the full data cache, the irrefutable evidence, is on a secure server, deep within the Council's primary data core on Lyra Prime. These keys will give you access to the outer layers, show you how to bypass the initial firewalls. But to get the core data, you will need to physically access the server." Rowan felt a chill. "Lyra Prime, you mean we have to go back to your home world?" Thistle's jaw tightened. It was always a possibility. The Council would never leave the critical evidence somewhere easily accessible. This makes it more dangerous but also more potent. If we broadcast from Lyra Prime itself, the impact will be undeniable. Cygnus shifted, their scales rippling. "I also received a coded message. An inquiry about a Lyra Prime diplomat, a female, traveling with an unregistered human. The description was vague, but the source was highly placed. Kale is close, Thistle, closer than you think." A sense of dread settled in Rowan's stomach, but it was quickly replaced by resolve. He looked at Thistle, her face a mask of determination. "We'll find a way," he said, his voice firm. "We always do." Thistle met his gaze, a flicker of warmth in her green eyes. "Indeed," she said. She took the data chip from Cygnus. "Thank you, Cygnus. Your risk will be rewarded." Cygnus simply nodded, already blending back into the shadows of the market. Thistle turned to Rowan, the small chip clutched in her hand. "This changes things. Our next move must be even more precise." Rowan knew the real fight was just beginning. They had a piece of the puzzle, a critical key, but the ultimate prize, the truth that would shake a galaxy, remained locked away on a hostile world. Their bond, tested in the silent expanse of space, would face its greatest challenge yet. Rowan and Thistle moved quickly through the Nexus Market, its vibrant chaos a stark contrast to the quiet dread now settling between them. "Lyra Prime will be heavily guarded," Thistle stated, her voice tight. "We need a ship that won't draw attention, something fast and discreet." "And a way to avoid Kale's net," Rowan added, his gaze sweeping the bustling docks. They found a small, older cargo vessel, the Stardust Wanderer, its hull patched but engines humming with a surprising strength. The pilot, a gruff, multi-limbed creature named Katar, quoted a steep price for passage to the Lyra Prime system's outer rim. "The Lyra Prime Council has tightened all jump routes since the recent diplomat disappearance," Katar rasped, folding one of his many arms. "Security patrols are everywhere. It will be a risky run." Thistle met Katar's gaze. "We understand the risks. Can you deliver us undetected?" Katar eyed Rowan, then Thistle. "For a premium, perhaps. I know a few back channels, old smuggler routes through the Kalan asteroid fields. Unpleasant but effective." Rowan felt a knot tighten in his stomach. "More asteroids. How long will that take?" "Twice the normal transit if we're lucky," Katar replied. 3 cycles." They agreed. The Stardust Wanderer lifted from terra firma, a tiny speck against the vastness, heading not directly for Lyra Prime, but towards the swirling, dark heart of the Callan fields. The journey was a test of nerves. Rowan spent hours in the co-pilot's seat, his engineering background proving invaluable as he helped Qatar monitor the ancient navigation systems, constantly recalibrating for rogue asteroids and gravitational anomalies. Thistle, meanwhile, pored over the data chip from Cygnus, her brow furrowed in concentration. The Council's data core is deep beneath the capital city, Veridia. Thistle explained one cycle into their journey, pointing to a holographic map. It's shielded by multiple layers of kinetic barriers and energy fields. These keys from Cygnus allow us to spoof some of the outer identification protocols, but the core access requires physical presence. How do we get into Veridia undetected? Rowan asked. He imagined a sprawling metropolis full of Thistle's people, all loyal to a corrupt government. There's a network of old subterranean service tunnels, Thistle mused, abandoned for decades. My father, he used to tell me stories about them. They run beneath the entire city, a forgotten labyrinth. Rowan considered the idea. Risky. What if they're monitored or collapsed? It's our best chance at avoiding direct scrutiny, Thistle countered, her green eyes intense. No one would expect someone to use them. It's too primitive. He watched her, a mix of admiration and worry in his chest. Her determination was a force. He knew how much this mission meant to her, not just for justice, but for her home. He found himself thinking about his own home, Earth, now a distant memory, and the new, dangerous reality he shared with Thistle. His heart ached for the quiet life he'd lost, but a stronger, warmer current flowed through him now, binding him to her purpose. We'll need to prepare, Rowan said, snapping back to the present. Any specific equipment for those tunnels? Just light sources and sturdy environmental suits, Thistle replied. The air down there might be stagnant, the passages narrow. She looked at him, a flicker of something raw in her gaze. Returning to Lyra Prime feels like stepping into a dream I once had, a forgotten nightmare. We face it together, Rowan assured her, reaching out to touch her hand. Her fur was soft against his palm, a grounding connection in the swirling uncertainty of space. Her fingers intertwined with his, a silent acknowledgement of their shared burden. Just as they neared the edge of the Callan fields, a proximity alarm blared. Qatar cursed in his native tongue. Council patrol. They've found a weakness in my route. Too early. Can you evade them? Thistle demanded, her composure instantly returning. Not without sacrificing speed, Qatar grunted, his limbs flying across the controls. And drawing more attention. They'll ping us as a rogue vessel. Rowan's mind raced. He remembered the comms device incident, the pressure it caused. Thistle, your old device, the one that caused the pressure. Can it create a localized, temporary energy surge? Thistle's eyes widened. A surge. It could overload their targeting systems, but it would draw immense power. It might alert every council ship in the sector to our general presence. Better than being boarded now, Rowan pressed. A focused pulse. It might buy us time to jump. Thistle hesitated, then nodded. It's a long shot. The feedback could be severe. She activated a hidden panel on her wrist, a complex array of alien symbols glowing. Hold tight. A sudden, jarring tremor shook the Stardust Wanderer. The lights flickered, and the air crackled with raw energy. Rowan felt a familiar pressure in his skull, more intense this time, like a wave crashing against his mind. Outside, on the viewscreen, the Council patrol ships flickered violently, their energy signatures spiking erratically before vanishing from the sensors. It worked, Qatar breathed, already plotting a jump course. But they'll know something hit them. They'll be looking. Thistle slumped against the console, breathing heavily. Her usually vibrant green eyes were dull, and a fine sheen of sweat coated her gray fur. The energy drain was considerable, and the backlash, I can feel it. Rowan moved to her side, concern etched on his face. Are you all right? She managed a weak smile, just a bit drained. It won't happen again quickly. Her internal energy reserves were depleted. "We're making the jump," Qatar announced, pulling a lever. The stars outside stretched into thin lines and then dissolved into the familiar blur of faster-than-light travel. They were on their way to Lyra Prime, but the Council now knew to expect them. The stakes had just been raised significantly. Rowan helped Thistle to a nearby bench, offering her a nutrient paste from his pack. He knew this was just the beginning. Lyra Prime was a fortress and Kale was a relentless hunter. Their alliance, forged in the quiet of his apartment, now faced the full fury of a galactic power. But looking at Thistle, her courage undimmed even in exhaustion, he felt a surge of defiant hope. They would find a way. They always did. The warmth of their shared resolve was a beacon in the cold, vast emptiness. The Stardust Wanderer maintained its faster-than-light journey, a silent arrow streaking through the void. Thistle rested, the nutrient paste slowly restoring her energy. Qatar kept a vigilant eye on the navigation, occasionally muttering to himself in his native tongue. Rowan sat beside Thistle, his hand resting lightly on her arm. He felt the soft texture of her fur, a grounding presence amidst the dizzying speed of their travel. "How much longer until we drop out of FTL?" Rowan asked, breaking the ship's quiet. Qatar glanced back. "Another cycle. We'll be on the outskirts of Lyra Prime's system. Too close, and the Council's long-range sensors will ping us instantly. Too far, and the jump to Viridia's atmosphere becomes a patrol magnet." Thistle stirred, her green eyes gaining back some of their luster. "We need to approach from the uninhabited polar region. The ancient tunnels emerge near the old mining districts. Those areas are rarely patrolled." "And the tunnels themselves," Rowan asked, "are they still accessible?" "They were built by my ancestors, deep beneath the capital," Thistle explained, her voice gaining strength. "Forgotten by most, deemed too primitive for modern use, but they connect directly to the lower levels of the Council's data core facility. It's a network of forgotten passages, some just large enough to crawl through, others wide enough for an atmospheric shuttle." "Crawling sounds appealing," Qatar grumbled from the pilot's chair. "Less chance of being seen by security cameras." Rowan felt a knot tighten in his stomach. Infiltrating an alien capital through forgotten tunnels sounded like something from a story, not real life. Yet here he was, ready to do it for Thistle. He thought of his quiet apartment, the scent of coffee, the familiar comfort of Earth. That life felt a million light-years away. "The challenge won't be just the tunnels," Thistle continued, her gaze fixed on a distant point beyond the viewport. "It will be Kale. She knows I am coming. She won't expect us to hit Lyra Prime itself, but she's tenacious. She'll have contingency plans." "We'll need a distraction," Rowan mused. "Something to draw their attention away from the mining districts." Qatar turned in his seat. "I can make a pass near the main spaceport, trigger some old distress beacon. It won't hold them long, but it might give you a window." "A window is all we need," Thistle affirmed. "Once we are inside the tunnels, we will be difficult to track. The older structures interfere with most modern sensor technology." The next cycle passed in a tense silence, punctuated only by Qatar's occasional commands to the ship systems. Rowan helped Thistle prepare their gear, compact energy cells, mapping devices, and a small, almost invisible data retrieval unit. He felt a surge of focused energy, the fear replaced by a keen awareness of the task ahead. This wasn't about him anymore. It was about exposing injustice, about Thistle's courage, about the lives dependent on their success. "Dropping out of FTL in 5, Qatar announced. The stars outside snapped back into pinpricks of light, then resolved into a swirling nebula, painting the void with colors Rowan had never imagined. A blue-green orb, Lyra Prime, shimmered in the distance. "Prepare for atmospheric entry," Thistle said, her voice firm. "Rowan, remember the layout I showed you. The ventilation shaft exit is key." The Stardust Wanderer angled towards the planet, a small, dark speck against the vastness. Qatar expertly navigated the outer atmosphere, bypassing the main planetary defenses by hugging the upper thermosphere. They approached the polar region, a jagged landscape of ice and dark rock. Sending the distress beacon now, Qatar reported. That should get their attention in about 10 minutes. He guided the ship down to a desolate landing zone near a series of ancient, crumbling structures that resembled massive, forgotten mines. The air was thin, cold, and utterly still. Rowan felt the shift in gravity, a subtle difference from Earth's pull. "This is it," Thistle whispered, her hand briefly touching Rowan's. "No turning back now." They disembarked, the ramp lowering with a soft hiss. Qatar stood by the ship, ready to execute his diversion and then make a rapid escape. Rowan looked at the entrance to the tunnels, a dark, gaping maw in the rock, almost swallowed by snowdrifts. "Good luck, you two," Qatar called out, his voice gruff but sincere. "Don't get caught." Rowan and Thistle entered the tunnel, the ancient air cold and heavy around them. The passage narrowed quickly, the rough-hewn stone walls damp and slick under their hands. Rowan activated his small headlamp, illuminating a path forward. He could hear Thistle's soft, rhythmic breathing beside him. They moved deeper, the sounds of the Stardust Wanderer fading behind them. The tunnels twisted and turned, a labyrinth of forgotten history. Rowan felt a peculiar sense of peace in the dark, a calm focus born of absolute necessity. He trusted Thistle completely. Suddenly, a faint, rhythmic thrum vibrated through the stone floor. It wasn't organic. It was a mechanical sound growing steadily louder. Rowan paused, holding up a hand. "Do you hear that?" he whispered. Thistle's ears twitched. "Council patrols. They must have responded to Qatar's diversion faster than we anticipated, or Kale truly did predict our method of entry." A light flickered at the far end of the tunnel, growing brighter, accompanied by the distinct whir of an automated drone. They were inside Lyra Prime, but their infiltration had already been compromised. To the side, quickly, Thistle pulled Rowan into a narrow crevice in the tunnel wall. The drone, a sleek metallic sphere, whirred past their hiding spot. Its bright light swept the ancient carvings on the stone before disappearing around a bend. Rowan held his breath, the cold air sharp in his lungs. "They're scanning the main passages," Thistle whispered, her green eyes darting. "We need to go deeper off the primary routes." She led him into a barely visible fissure. The path became tighter, rougher, forcing them to squeeze through. Rowan's headlamp scraped against the low ceiling. He could hear the distant whir of more drones, a growing chorus in the labyrinth. "These are old service tunnels," Thistle explained, her voice tight. "Forgotten, unmapped by current council tech." They navigated the treacherous, winding passages for what felt like hours. Rowan relied on Thistle's innate sense of direction, her memory of paths from childhood stories and forbidden lore. They climbed over fallen rock, slid down steep inclines and crossed subterranean streams. His muscles ached, but the urgency fueled him. "Almost there," Thistle finally said, her voice strained. They emerged into a wide, smooth-walled corridor, starkly modern compared to the ancient paths. The air here was sterile, cool, and hummed with controlled energy. "The data core entrance," Rowan observed, seeing a massive, reinforced door at the far end, flanked by automated sentries. "How do we get past those?" "Direct approach is impossible," Thistle confirmed. "We need a diversion." She scanned the ceiling. "There's an old maintenance access above. I can disable the sentries from the control room beyond the door, but it requires a physical key override only available inside." "So I create the diversion," Rowan stated. "What do I do?" Thistle paused, her gaze locking with his. "You draw their fire. Create enough chaos for me to get through that maintenance hatch, drop into the control room, and disable them for you." "Sounds like a plan," Rowan nodded, a grim resolve settling over him. "Give me 5 minutes." He reached into his pack, pulling out a small, high-frequency sonic emitter he had jury-rigged from old parts on the Stardust Wanderer. This should get their attention. He activated the emitter, aiming it at the corridor walls. A shrill, piercing whine echoed, distorting the air. The sentries immediately pivoted, their optical sensors glowing red as they locked onto Rowan. Energy bolts lanced out, narrowly missing him as he dove behind a discarded equipment crate. "Go," he yelled. Thistle moved with incredible speed, scaling the smooth wall as if it were a ladder. Her claws found purchase in imperceptible seams. She reached the maintenance hatch, forcing it open with a grunt of effort, and disappeared inside. Rowan continued his frantic dance with the sentries, dodging blasts, the sonic emitter proving surprisingly effective at confusing their targeting systems. Suddenly, the sentries powered down, their red lights fading. The reinforced door hissed open. Thistle stood inside, breathing heavily, a small data chip in her hand. "That was close," she said, a faint smile touching her lips. "Kale is on his way." My override triggered an alert. They rushed into the data core chamber. It was vast, dominated by glowing crystal arrays and intricate energy conduits. A central console pulsed with complex data streams. Thistle inserted her chip, her fingers flying across the holographic interface. "The evidence is fragmented, distributed across redundant servers," she explained, her focus absolute. "I need to consolidate it, then initiate the broadcast protocol." A cold voice cut through the air. "You won't." Kale emerged from a shadowy alcove, his blue fur bristling. He held a disruptor pistol, its barrel glowing faintly. "I knew you would come here, Thistle. Your sentimentality for your people is a weakness." "My people deserve the truth," Kale, Thistle retorted, not looking up from the console. "Your council's exploitation ends today." Kale fired. Rowan, without hesitation, pushed Thistle aside, the energy blast searing past his arm, leaving a burning trail on his jacket. He grabbed a heavy wrench from a nearby toolkit. "Rowan," Thistle cried, her eyes wide with alarm. "Keep working," Rowan yelled back, charging Kale. He swung the wrench in a wide arc. Kale, nimble despite his bulk, dodged the blow, firing another shot that grazed Rowan's shoulder. The impact sent a shockwave through him. Rowan stumbled but recovered, using the close quarters to his advantage. He lunged, tackling Kale to the ground. They struggled, Kale's alien strength formidable, but Rowan's desperate resolve fueled him. He twisted the disruptor pistol from Kale's grip, sending it skittering across the floor. "You are just a human," Kale snarled, throwing Rowan off him. "Just a human who knows injustice," Rowan countered, scrambling to his feet. Kale lunged, aiming a powerful kick. Rowan blocked it with his arm, the bone jarring, but it created an opening. He grabbed Kale's leg, twisting. Kale roared, off balance, and Rowan pushed him against one of the crystal arrays. The array sparked violently, overloading from the impact. "Broadcast initiated," Thistle announced, her voice triumphant. Holographic screens flickered to life across the chamber, displaying the council's corruption in stark detail. Kale, momentarily stunned, saw the images. His eyes widened in disbelief and fury. He tried to break free, but the crystal array pulsed, trapping him in a field of crackling energy. He let out a frustrated growl. "It's done, Kale," Thistle said, turning from the console. "The truth is out." Across Lyra Prime, the broadcast cut through all official channels. Citizens watched in horrified silence as undeniable evidence of their government's systematic exploitation of other worlds flooded their screens. Public outcry erupted instantly, a wave of shock turning into righteous anger. Thistle watched the global reaction, a profound sadness in her eyes mixed with a fierce pride. "A new government will rise from this," she said softly, "one based on honesty." Rowan, breathing heavily, approached her. He touched her arm, a silent reassurance. "You did it." Katar's voice crackled over their comms. "Council security is in chaos. They're evacuating key personnel. The Stardust Wanderer is ready for immediate extraction. Get out now." They moved quickly, leaving Kale trapped but unharmed by the energy field. As they fled the data core, Alarms blared throughout the facility. They retraced their steps, finding a path that led directly to a secluded shuttle bay Thistle knew. They boarded a small, unmarked shuttle, Thistle expertly piloting it into Lyra Prime's chaotic orbit. Katar's ship was a beacon in the sky, swiftly docking with them. Safe aboard the Stardust Wanderer, Rowan slumped into a seat, his shoulder throbbing. Thistle knelt beside him, her touch gentle as she examined his injuries. "You saved me, Rowan." "We saved them," he corrected, looking out at the receding blue-green orb of Lyra Prime. "Together." The journey back to Earth was quieter, filled with a different kind of understanding. The galaxy was no longer a distant mystery, but a place they had directly impacted. Thistle, no longer a diplomat on the run but a hero, watched the stars with a newfound peace. Weeks later, back in Rowan's apartment, the quiet calm had returned, but it was deeper, more profound. The couch, once a symbol of loneliness, now represented a beginning. Thistle sat beside him, her head resting on his shoulder, her tail gently curled around his arm. "My people are rebuilding," she said, her voice soft. "They offered me a position in the new council to help guide them." Rowan held his breath. He knew this moment was coming. She looked up at him, her green eyes filled with an emotion that transcended worlds. "But my home isn't just Lyra Prime anymore. It's here, with you." Rowan felt a warmth spread through him, healing the last vestiges of his old heartbreak. He pulled her closer, the quiet evening no longer about two worlds in conflict, but about two souls finding their true place, bridging the vastness of space with a bond unbreakable. Their story was not about endings, but the endless possibilities of a shared life, a new beginning on a quiet couch on Earth.